say. And so this is a first. It's a Microsoft video recorded, and hopefully this will work this way. Otherwise, I'll just switch to doing it the old school way.
Yeah, let's give it a shot. I'm anxious to see how this comes across, especially on Zoom when we have a recording inside a recording. So it'll be a fun experiment nonetheless. And John, are you able to share your screen as an initial step? Hey, John, are you able to share your screen?
I thought I was, sorry.
Oh, yeah, sometimes when you have like dual monitors, it can get a little wonky. Oh yeah, there you go.
So what do you see?
I see your PowerPoint slide. So if you go full screen on your PowerPoint and then hit play, hopefully that'll work.
And did you hear the presentation?
No.
No. Sorry.
Oh,
How about now?
I see you now. I still don't hear it. That looks cool. Let's see. Maybe it's an audio output situation.
So Brent, you don't hear anything?
No.
Okay, so okay, just bear with me. I'll just talk through it then live.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
Okay, are we ready?
Yeah, now the only challenge, John, is can you go through this presentation live and still nail it at 15 minutes? I'm going to give you 20.
Okay, so thanks for listening today. My name is John Mitchell. My background, I was the director of joint ventures at Motorola, founder of my own software company. I managed a business accelerator out of Mexico for one of the years at ASU. Been the mentor and catalyst for 16 ASU startups. I have a couple of patents and the author of 2 novels. I don't know why that took off on me. So I do want to say that I don't work for LinkedIn. I don't get paid, by LinkedIn. So, but I will say that I have been a member of LinkedIn since 2003. I'm up to about 10,000 contacts at this point, and consider LinkedIn kind of my professional currency, so to speak. So if I leave what company, the first one company, that LinkedIn profile, that network comes with me. So I want to first say a little color here. If you've ever heard of the PayPal Mafia, one of the founders of LinkedIn was part of the PayPal Mafia. When eBay acquired PayPal, most of the founders actually left the company, and they ended up starting companies like SpaceX, LinkedIn, YouTube, Kiva, Yelp, and many other startups. And so the point is, your network is actually can be affected by your network can actually affect your net worth. LinkedIn is in 24 different languages, pretty much all around the world. Was acquired by Microsoft in 2015, the largest acquisition price that they've ever paid. 700 million members on it, 60% of them are Americans. 80% of recruiters use LinkedIn. And I'm sorry, I may have to turn something off here. Clear timings on all slides. So 87% of all recruiters use LinkedIn really to validate candidates, make sure they have, their resume matches their LinkedIn profile, and kind of recommendations and things like that are appropriate. But more importantly, 87% of them source their candidates on LinkedIn. Now, if you look at the United States, 25% of all adults in the US are on LinkedIn. Nothing's as close as Facebook, but if you look at, and Snapchat, but if you look at the other social media sites, the one distinction that LinkedIn has is it is a professional site as opposed to the other ones are really personal in nature. So I'm going to talk about the 6 steps really in kind of building your brand, and then I'll talk about how do you actually use it in an effective way.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
This LinkedIn that you are presenting to us, are you presenting it to us as the point of view as, okay, I'm the business that has this LinkedIn page, or as an individual?
As an individual.
Okay, thank you.
As a job, as a professional, as an individual professional job seeker from that perspective.
I understand. Sorry about that. Thank you.
That's okay. That's okay. So my slide does say recruiter brand on LinkedIn, but that's only because I leveraged it from another place. So on your profile picture, pretty basic stuff, right? I mean, it should be close up, you should be looking at the camera, you should smile, you should have a neutral background. And it seems like you don't even need to say this, but you need to dress appropriately. And having said that, these are actual LinkedIn profiles that I've found on LinkedIn. So unless you're in the animal care business, no animals. Unless you're in the alcohol business, no alcohol. And having no picture, by the way, is probably even worse than having a bad picture. To me, that sends the message that like you just don't really care enough to put your professional photograph on there. How do you know your photograph is good? There are actually apps out there, free apps like Photo Feeler that can have kind of democratize the public can vote on what your strengths are in a business environment. But you could probably also find that from a trusted colleague. My experience tells me that you don't want to do it with people too close to you. Your parents aren't probably a good one. Probably a colleague or someone at a business would be a better someone to use than your parents. So you want to find a good background image. Here's 6 ideas. I think for this group, if I were you, I would really leverage the ASU brand. You guys are soon to be graduates. ASU's had a lot of momentum in the marketplace, headlines coming out on a weekly basis. I would leverage the ASU brand in your background. So headline. Headline should include your job title, company name, keywords, but really kind of more of a zing factor. What really is more interesting about you than kind of name, rank, and serial number. So here's some actual headlines from ASU recent graduates in engineering in particular. If I look at the last one here, skills, software development. You probably could not get more generic than software development that says almost nothing about the person. I would want to be looking for things like, I always make my deadlines, or I'm a team player, something more impactful than software development, very vanilla. And if we looked at some examples that LinkedIn itself points out, so for example, reduced readmission rates by 17% across 2.5 million patients. It's really hard to argue with that number. It's factual, it's not subjective, it's not a subjective verb, so it's very concrete knowledge. a concrete fact about your performance. So I think that's very a good way to state things. Here's a couple of other good examples. So these are, again, real profiles. Najla, if I pronounced her name correctly. So she's best class marketer, communicator, problem solver, and connector. Now, what I like about that is that skill is very broad. That skill is applicable in any industry, in any vertical. And so she could probably go work anywhere with that kind of background. If we look at Hillary, she's saying, bringing the creative advertising talent to play in San Francisco. And so in that market, right, the word play is acceptable. It's an acceptable norm. And so you should understand the norms in your industry and kind of stick with them. And so, Hillary is actually considered a big, LinkedIn super user with those kind of words. You wouldn't use a word like that in most business environments or in engineering. So the About section in LinkedIn. So this is your opportunity to bring a little bit more of your personality to start. It actually, you can have a summary of your background and kind of where you've been, where you want to go, things like that. But it only shows the first 3 lines. And so you want to start strong, okay? You want to make sure that the people click and look at the rest of your summary. So make the first line is critical, just like in a novel, right? And I'm going to show you some examples here. So if we look at Shauna, right? She says, I'm the colleague at work that everyone wants to know, but nobody wants to be. Now, that really says a lot in that one sentence, right? Sounds like a very strong person, sounds like a very competent person. It may turn someone off, but I look at that and say, wow, this is someone I'd want on my team. Sounds like she comes to work and, swings the bat every day. A software developer here, Katrina, her first sentence, I caught fire coding. Wow. I mean, that brings out a lot of personality in her, and I think in a very good way. So if you start thinking about not this history of you things like I started as an engineer, blah, blah, blah. This is pretty good. I caught fire coding, right? I want to know more. You should also come up with your own, I think they call it, I can't read my notes here, but your own personal LinkedIn URL. So mine is John J. Mitchell /AZ. And once you have that personalized LinkedIn address, you should use it on your resume, you should use it on social media and so forth. Creating content. Here's the one that it may be challenging for students, since it's probably easier once you've had, years of experience. There's ways around that. But anyway, you want to post things that are kind of relevant to your business, things that you care about, things that you find interesting, and things that you think other people in your industry will think are interesting. And I think you have to be smart about it. I don't think you want to post too often. You don't want to post too infrequently. It's a subjective thing. I think you have to balance between how often you do it versus how interesting it is. Maybe at least once a month, but not daily, right? Everyone knows people who post stuff like, they have lunch, they post something. So you want to engage your audience and really kind of share something interesting. Again, it has to be relevant to the business world that you want to operate in. So there's 10 reasons. I'm only going to list 5. Okay. So if you heard the term, he wrote the book or she wrote the book on fill in the blank. Okay. It's almost irrelevant if anyone reads the book, right? But what it says is like you are an expert in that field because you wrote the book on it. And believe me, I know people that leverage this maybe a little more than they should, right? They wrote the book on Silicon Valley because they worked at HP for 5 years. But it's actually, I find it's effective, right? So, balance that with, you know, your personal integrity. But writing, publishing something almost automatically puts you in a different category. If you're trying to get a job in graphics and you wrote the, you know, book on graphics for idiots, then now you're an expert. So here's, I'm gonna give you some examples. So I personally don't have a lot of content. I work with people who have a lot of content. And so, excuse me, I posted this recently. ASU students placed second in the World at Robotics competition. In 1.5 days, I got over 1,600 views on that, okay? And I'm associated with it by way of, you know, by way of ASU. I really did not have a hand in it, okay? But in less than a day, I received comments from Priscilla James, and she invited me to invite ASU students to compete in the Baylor New Venture competition. So this is the network at work, right? You know, it's benefiting my network and benefiting Baylor as well. And so now this Priscilla and I have, you know, I've never met her in person, but we have a professional, you know, a virtual relationship where we may send students back and forth. Here's one. So at ASU, so at first I promote ASU, but specifically, more specifically, I promote solar at ASU. And so one of the solar spinouts at ASU, they came up with this technology that literally pulls water from air. I posted that recently and, you know, received within a day or so over 1,000 views. And so now when I reach out to solar companies, there's nothing in it for me here, right? But the positioning of me in the solar marketplace is different now. Now I'm kind of this, you know, person who's working for the good of solar as opposed to my own, you know, personal benefit. Here's one, Carlos Navarro. He won the ASU Innovation Challenge. He's not actually even an ASU student, but I posted this, again, got over 1,000 views. And interestingly enough, I got a lot of people from, he's a USC student. A lot of my colleagues that I know and some that I don't reached out to me from USC and, you know, have, you know, expressed their gratitude for that. And so that's, again, helping my network. So recommendations. So recommendations are, do not be afraid to ask for recommendations. But the most important thing I think is to ask for them in a timely fashion. Don't do an internship and then 3 years later ask for a recommendation. Ask for a recommendation while you're still there, maybe in your last week, right? And so if you ask for a recommendation and you're still there, it's going to be a little uncomfortable for them not to give you a recommendation. So keep that in mind. Recommendations do help for a couple of reasons. One reason is it lowers the risk for hiring managers. And so if Honeywell, a director at Honeywell said you did a fantastic job on your internship, that lowers the risk for someone else hiring them. It's like say, hey, you know, he looked good on paper. He or she had a great resume and Honeywell raved about him. So it's not, you know, it's not my fault if the hire doesn't work out. Other tactics, okay? So that's the kind of, you know, setting up your profile. Here's some very tactical things. It is, I think, a good idea to join a nonprofit, ideally in your field, but not necessarily in your field. It says a lot about you and what type of nonprofit you would choose to help. So for example, myself, I was asked because I work in kind of business development and economic development and help people get jobs. So I was asked by the Arizona correctionals industry to be on their advisory board to help their inmates actually get skill sets to go out into the marketplace. And it turned out to be a lot more interesting than I ever would have imagined. And one of the side benefits, which I never foresaw, there's a lot of politicians involved in this. And so my political connections in the local area have actually gone from basically zero to a little bit. So you should also view your profile for relevancy. So monitor your views. Why? Because now you're going to know how your brand is doing. So if we look at, I have a little spike here, 173% since last week. But what did I do last week? Last week I posted the thing about the robotics competition. And so a lot of people, CEOs are looking at my my profile. So is that good for me? It's not bad for me, definitely. So I think that's good. And it's even more important for you kind of early on in your career. Not only who's looking at there, but you can find out what industries are looking at your profile. So that's always good to know. And if the right industries aren't looking at you, well, then you're probably not positioned the right way. If I'm getting looked at by, people in the entertainment business, I'm not in the entertainment business. I'm doing something wrong. One message I want to try to get across, I can't get across strong enough, just like investing in your pension and things like that, the earlier you start, the better off you're going to be, because your network is going to only increase in value over time. So the basics are collect and distribute business cards electronically, send LinkedIn requests within days of meeting people. You would be, I'm pleasantly surprised sometimes, not pleasantly is not the right word. One of the values that I bring to ASU faculty is they actually are not very good at this. They may not even have a business card. I mean, I've literally had cases where faculty member met me and say, hey, I met with, Ying Li, and they're very interested in working with us. Oh, do you have the business card? No, I don't. What was his name? I don't remember. Okay. I went on LinkedIn. I said, well, I'm going to show you pictures of people that I know that work at Ying Li on my LinkedIn connection. And we went through 40 of them. There he is. Reached out to that person. He became a member of our center and have been lived happily ever after. So follow job changes, promotions, and anniversaries. Promotions in particular are a great time to reach out to someone in your network and congratulate them. So here's an example of Brian McCann. Brian was like one of my first employees back in my Motorola days. He worked for me right out of university. Now he's the chief product officer at Nokia. I reached out and really sincerely, congratulated him. It wasn't just for the network thing. Actually very proud of Brian. But guess what? Now I have an open door at Nokia going forward. Follow alumni. So alumni that you're connected with, it's very important to keep in touch with them. When they get promoted, it's their anniversary. If you have a good relationship with them, I think the birthday thing, you have to use your best judgment. I don't do it to people I don't know well. Otherwise it'd be borderline creepy. But people that in your network starting on college, some of them will exceed your capabilities and become big people. So it's a small world out there, but you have to pay attention to it. Join alumni associations. And so that's one of the things that we're talking to Brent about doing it for this class, actually. I run one from my research center, and that's proven to be very fruitful. Now I have students in there that are from 8 years ago. They're in pretty prominent positions in both industry and in government. Find out who's hiring. And so, not just because you want to get a job there. It's actually good to know in general, right? So there may be some companies that you don't think are doing that well, and all of a sudden they're starting to hire a lot of people. Okay, that's valuable knowledge, if for nothing else, for your investment portfolio. You think about it that way. So you want to be interested in companies that are doing a lot of hiring. There's something going on there, and vice versa. So you want to be knowledgeable in the marketplace. And that's one way to have that kind of knowledge. That's not going to be always in the headlines that, Intel's got a new chip that they're going to, blow up the world with. But if all of a sudden they're hiring tenfold, okay, maybe there is something to it. Join relevant groups. So for myself, I join different solar groups because I network with people in there. I find out who are some of the kind of more, I get to know what people in that industry are doing both personally and professionally. Be investigative. So I had a meeting set up with Brian. Before I met with him, I wanted to find out what companies he followed. I wanted to know what groups he was in. I wanted to know who he's connecting with, so that when I meet with him, I have an understanding of his background and kind of what his interests are, and kind of let him know it too. Say, hey, I know that you seem to be interested in XYZ. Well, people love, the most favorite subject of most people is themselves. And so I think it's always a good idea to recognize them and call out some of their strengths and what you know about them. Connect with recruiters. So you may look at a job posting and think, well, maybe I'm not qualified for that. But a strategy might be to reach out to the recruiter, ask him or her to look at your profile, ask for some input on your profile. And now there's a face with the person. It's not just, an applicant in some applicant tracking system. There's a little bit of a relationship there. And even if you're not a good fit for a certain position, you never know. Maybe Phil, in this case, will keep you in mind for something else or refer you to one of his colleagues who is hiring that kind of person. So plan well in advance. So think about building your network years ahead of time. At one point in time, I thought about moving to Costa Rica. And so what I did was I reached out to people in different groups in Costa Rica, like the big business school in Costa Rica, reached out and connected with those folks. You don't want to wait until, okay, next week I want to move to Costa Rica. I know no one there. I know nothing about it. So you can invest well in advance and build your network before you need it. So in conclusion, you want to invest and build your brand before it's needed. You want to invest and build your network before it's needed. And also, this is kind of a personal philosophy. If you have a mindset that you should always be looking for a job, then you're never going to get caught flat-footed. And I've seen this to people in my career. They stay at the same job for 10 years. The industry shifts and they get laid off. Now they find out that particularly in technical fields, that their skill set is no longer relevant, right? So always be looking for a job so that you can kind of calibrate your skill set with what the market is looking for. And so with that, I want to say thank you and say that I accept all LinkedIn requests.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. Great presentation. Nailed it. You've only done that about 100 times, so it shows. You are well versed and well researched in this domain. So I personally really appreciated all the illustrations and examples that you were able to provide.
So, my pleasure, Brent.
Yeah, thanks so much, John. So before we open it up to students who I'm sure have some clarifying questions to ask, since we have a couple of the pro TAs here, Maria, Bev, and look like Dan too. Do any of the pro TAs want to kind of reinforce some of the, the meta rationale for the importance of these strategies that John introduced? I know, Bev, you had a good comment there earlier. So, Bev, you want to kick us off?
Sure. So, John, thank you. One of the reasons why I decided to listen in today is because I myself am always interested in figuring out how to leverage LinkedIn and my LinkedIn network a little bit more. And the comment that I made is advice that I give to students who are struggling to find a job, either internship-wise between terms or just after school, when the economy isn't at its most robust. And my recommendation is, if you can afford it, go volunteer, like at the ASPCA or someplace that feeds your heart, but do that volunteering within the context of the training that you've gotten. So for instance, if you're going to go to the ASPCA, go do computer science at the ASPCA, because they always need somebody for data entry. It'll get you in with the ASPCA, but it'll also increase your network. But John, one of the questions I have is, you said you accept all LinkedIn requests.
That's correct.
And I have, over the years, actually limited my LinkedIn connections to people that I can vouch for, right? That I've worked with or taught, or otherwise can say, yes, I know that person and I'm willing to connect you. Because to me, LinkedIn is about that network, is about that connection. So can you say more about accepting any and all requests?
Yeah, I see no reason why I wouldn't accept them, because you never know. You know, maybe someday there will be a business in Africa that, you know, will want to invest in. You know, it's different if someone is spamming you. That's different. I haven't had that experience. But I see no reason not to accept LinkedIn requests, because, you know, things change, right? I don't want to know just people in solar. I may want to know people who work in, you know, electric autonomous vehicles. I see no reason to not accept them.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I've always,
if you only accept people you know, how will you grow your network?
well, it's not necessarily just the ones that I know as much as it is the ones that I can vouch for, right? So certainly, you know, business card acquaintances, that kind of thing. Oh yes, I worked with that person when we were working on a project together to do X, Y, or Z, right? Because very often the requests that I get are, hey, I'm interested in knowing about X and I see you're connected to Y. Would you connect me? And I'm unwilling to make that connection unless I know both sides of the, I don't want to ruin my brand by opening the path to somebody who I can't, you know, for somebody who's going to be
Sure.
not connectable.
So I completely understand that position. I just choose not to be that way. Yeah, if someone asks me like, hey, can you vouch for me and connect me to someone, and I don't know them, well, then I don't.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, Bev.
And by the way, Bev, I think I reached out to you and connected with you already, didn't I?
Yeah, because you're part of the Pro TA team.
Okay.
Yeah, Bev, I think I understand Bev's line of questioning on that, because it maybe put another way, John, do you see any risk in your connections reflecting poorly on you to other connections maybe? Might be
Well, I have 10,000 connections, and I've been in the network since 2003, and it hasn't happened yet. Maybe it will.
Okay. That's okay.
fair point.
That's a good point. That's a fair point. That's a fair
Maybe
point.
Bev, he's just got so many that people are in it. They just can't wrap their minds around, you know, distinguishing John's awesomeness from anybody with a history of 10,000. Maria or Dan, do you guys want to chime in before we open it up?
Well, I'll add a slightly different aspect or facet to that dialogue or debate, which is if you're reaching out to people to connect with them, and I do this all the time. I probably, I don't know if it's equally distributed how many requests I get versus how many I make. But if I'm reaching out to connect with someone, I always tell them why I'm trying to connect with them. Okay? What is it? Why not tell them what you have to offer, right? And I've gone on both sides of the perspective that Bev and John were describing, and at one point explicitly put in my LinkedIn profile, please just tell me why you want to connect. I think that's just good networking practice as much as anything.
Yeah, Dan, I completely agree. I typically would send a reason why. I don't reach out to people just to reach out to them. I reach out to them for a specific reason. So I completely agree.
Yeah.
Dan, why don't you take that call during class? We want to know who's calling you. We want to know what you're going
It's
to
one
talk.
of his LinkedIn members.
I can tell you exactly who it is. It's my daughter, and she's probably wanting to share something that my granddaughter's doing.
Hey, that sounds pretty fun. We'll let you take that call. Thanks, Dan, for chiming in.
Sure.
Good point. Maria, anything you want to add? Oh, you're muted, Maria. Nope. There you go. Oh, I thought we had you. Nope. Nope. It's okay. Yeah, one thing that always works for me is if you run the mic test down at the bottom, just do a quick mic test. But we can come back to you, Maria. No worries. Let's see. Krishan has some comments going in chat. Krishan, feel free to unmute and chime in if you want to elaborate further. I don't know if you're joking or anyway. Yeah, it's an interesting debate about who to request and who not to or who to accept and who not to accept. I think my take is probably boils down to your own personal preference and your fortitude on social media, LinkedIn included. Me personally, when I'm going through that list of requests, and by the way, I'm nowhere near John's level of expertise here, but like John was saying about the profile pictures, he's absolutely right. I do not accept LinkedIn requests most of the time with people that don't have a profile picture because 9 times out of 10, I just don't recognize who that person is by name. So that's a really interesting point, John, there. So Jack has his hand raised. And again, Krishan, if you want to chime in and unmute, you're welcome to. So how about Jack and then Lauren?
Alrighty. Mr. Mitchell, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to talk to us. I think it was really insightful for me.
My pleasure, Jack. Thank you.
So my biggest question is, the way I've always viewed LinkedIn is kind of how you first put it in your presentation. Okay, it's my online version of my resume. It is kind of stagnant. I don't go on it on a daily or weekly basis, but instead, when I make a connection in real life or have an interview, they're able to see that who I am is actually reflective of what I said in the interview. And so my question is, do I need to switch something? I mean, I just don't see it as a platform to connect. I just see it as a platform for an online resume. What would you suggest?
So think about that example I gave with that gentleman I used to work with, right? It's your online resume, but it's also the online resume of all your contacts as well. I mean, I know people that I worked with in California that moved to China, that became vice presidents of big companies years later. And I said, oh, wow, Jason, congratulations. I'm going to be in China next week. How about if I stop by? I mean, that's how I use it. That's how it can be used. That's way more beneficial than a resume. And the other thing is, and back to the point that was made earlier, I totally understand if you don't want to accept invitations. However, it also depends on what role you have in business. So I'm in business development. So I get asked on a regular basis, do you know anyone at X, right? And if I said no too many times, my value plummets, right? My value is by saying, well, if I don't know someone, I'll know within a day or two. I will find someone there. So it's way more than a resume. It's the resume of others, and the kind of think of it as a real-time resume of others. Like when they change jobs, right? How would you know if someone you worked with 5 years ago is now the vice president of a bank, unless you had a personal connection with them? No, you have a professional connection with them, and you're going to know when those type of events occur.
So and I won't, last question here, but I'm kind of in the same boat as Ms. Crayer, where hey, I don't really accept people I don't know. I was in a class last semester and the girl sitting next to me, every single person that came up on a recommendation she was connecting with, and she didn't even know who they were. She didn't know her name, and was to boost that number to 500 or whatever connections. And I didn't see the true benefit of that. So would you recommend finding a middle ground? How do you, it's not the same platform as Instagram where, hey, I want to connect with this person because I know them personally. It's more of the professional setting of it. So is it important to have people our own age, or for us to connect with more people with more experience like you and Professor Sibold? Or
Well, I would say age has very little to do with it. I think it's more about domain and what their position is. I would want to be connected with, I would want to be connected with the recruiters, first of all, right? Because guess what happens if you're connected with a lot of recruiters? You get a lot of job offers. Is that a bad, from people you don't know, right? It's not a bad thing. But I don't know, I go back to I have not had any downside to operating in that mode of accepting all invitations. Now, I will, if the person doesn't have a professional, they have like one connection and they don't look real, I won't accept it. But as long as they have what appears to be a professional background, I see no reason not to accept it. And again, though, I'm not a research scientist, I'm in business development.
thank you.
Did that answer your question, Jack?
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Cool. And so it looks like Avery had the same question. So hopefully that that helps clarify things. Hey, Krishan, do you mind unmuting? Because it seems like I'm really glad you're active here on chat, but there's so much nuance to this particular discussion. I don't want to lose anything over chat.
Yeah, I was just thinking that what's the point of having a social network like LinkedIn if you only connect to people you know? You might as well just get their phone number at that point and just text them.
Yeah, that's called a Rolodex, and it's old fashioned.
Yeah, and I would also, Krishan, probably make the distinction that, this is in fact, and I'd love to hear John's take on this, LinkedIn is social media, but I think what makes LinkedIn particularly powerful is that it's professional. It's a professional network. It's not a social network, right? So when we hear the term social network, we think of Facebook and, that's the name of the movie. But a professional network, I think that to me, that's what made LinkedIn valuable right out of the gate. It was a little bit more, Krishan, using your word, elitist, but I think it's actually more pointed than that, where it's like, hey, I'm going to make very strategic connections to advance my professional standing. Or in the case of this class, I want to leverage this professional network to position myself as somebody that's practicing the art and science or craft of innovation or whatever it is that you're into specifically. So I don't know. I think we all get what you're saying, but there might be a nuance here between a social network and a professional network. So John, can you chime in on that maybe a little bit? And Krishan, tell me if I'm wrong on any of that too.
So, I am completely inactive on social media, but LinkedIn, I find that different.
So do you classify LinkedIn as social media or not?
Yeah, I think it's social media, but it's a professional, as you said, a professional network. And that's, I consider we're all professionals, right? Yeah, we have social lives, but I keep my social life, I keep in a smaller circle.
I have a question.
Yeah, Avery.
So, okay, just like to get for the sake of transparency and specifics. So, I actually got let go from my job at a corporation, because of COVID. So, right now, obviously, I'm not going to put my headliner or my opening as my job description because I don't currently have one. So would you recommend, especially for students, for us to still capitalize on WP Carey, being I'm a student right now, and then put our areas of expertise or what we're wanting to pursue, or what kind of would be like the formula for right now.
Yeah, you would want to put your areas of expertise and what your skills are as they relate to that. And by the way, you can also, I wouldn't put it in your headline that you're unemployed, but you can put in, there's a way to let recruiters only know that you're interested in openings.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't put I'm unemployed because you're only supposed to look for a job when you have a job. So I would not just advertise that. Good tip.
And thanks, Avery, for being so transparent with us. Yeah.
And you know, I do want to add one thing, probably to my slide deck. So I actually found my last 2 positions through LinkedIn, and even though I've been very happy at ASU, so I've stayed at ASU, but since being at ASU, I have a fairly regular, and it's not, oh, because I'm so great, it's because I think I have a good LinkedIn profile. I have a fairly regular stream of recruiters contacting me.
High demand.
Yeah, like I say, it's high visibility.
The contacts aren't just actually about you, right? It's also about, do you know people in X, Y, or Z? That's what I get a lot is, hey, I'm looking for this type of person, or this person with this kind of experience. Do you know anybody? I'm assuming you get that as well.
Yes, and frankly, that's part of my role at ASU. People say, hey, I need to find someone who knows about electrolysis. Well, I'll vet them, meet with them, maybe via WebEx or Zoom myself to make sure they're legit, make sure they have, I'll vet them, make sure they have funding, and then I'll make connections with the faculty. But I'm saying that within the context of ASU, the same would hold true if I were in business development at a corporation, right? Does the corporation, do you have this type of product? Do you do this kind of research? Do you have any type of know-how in this particular area?
Great. Thanks, Bev. Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone, for chiming in. Other questions? We're going to wrap up probably a little bit early. Maria, I don't know if your mic is back on. You want to give it another college try?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go. Good to hear from you.
First, thanks, John, because I have not done a good job of my LinkedIn profile, so that was really helpful. I do have a question about when people do reach out to you. Do you respond to everybody, or how do you? Because sometimes I get a lot of people trying to sell me things too.
If I have a rule of thumb. If they send me a LinkedIn request with more than a sentence or 2, I'll accept it, but I will ignore the request. I find that, brevity is very important when making someone's point. And when people start off about, the history of their company and things like that, I'll still accept their request, but that's as far as I'll go.
Okay.
Great question.
Which, by the way, also, I think, is something, for our students to think about when you're reaching out to someone in almost any professional setting. Written communication, the more brief and to the point your written communication is, the better. One of the reasons, this will become one of my little secrets, one of the reasons why our faculty are unable to do some of the things I can do is because they're so verbose that no one's going to read a 3-page, email. I'll say like, hey, we're working on a proposal described in the link below. Can we discuss, right? They'll start with the history of, energy and, never grab the attention of the audience.
Great. So any other questions or comments? Thanks to Jennifer and to Avery and Kushan and Jack and everybody for chiming in. Really appreciate all of you, all probably 30 of you that showed up when you didn't have to. Hopefully our hope is that you learned something and further, strengthen your relationship with the pro TAs who
Can I
have.
ask you a quick question?
Yeah, Ricardo. Yeah, go ahead, bud.
Oh, I wanted to see what advice you, John, would give to, like, for example, like I've applied to internships, but so far, like, nobody has given me the opportunity. So then, like, on my LinkedIn profile, in terms of like experience and stuff like that, like, there's hardly anything in there besides the skills I've learned in class. And so I feel like sometimes when people are looking on LinkedIn, because they don't see that you have like internship experience or something like that, they might not like give you the opportunity to contact you. So like, what advice would you give in that situation?
So my advice would be to reach out to people at that company and ask them for their advice on how you could get an internship. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's just that like I've tried that in the past, and usually it's just like either nobody replies or yeah, it's just nothing happens from there.
So yeah, there is some persistence required, but I would definitely want to use the student card to say, I'm a student here, trying to figure out what is the best way to get an internship at company X. Can you recommend or let me know who could give me advice on how to get an internship? And often it's easier for people to, redirect you to someone else. But when you get redirected to someone else, you could say, well, John Smith actually recommended I speak to you about this internship. And so now you've got a little more traction than you had. Does that make sense, Ricardo?
Yes, sir. I'll just keep on being persistent and keep on trying.
Yeah, and if you follow, you follow those people who you think might be the hiring managers, and when they post things, that's an ideal time to comment on what they posted and say, gee, that sounds like a really interesting project. I wish I could be a part of it. If for lack of a more elegant way of saying it.
Yeah, I think Ricardo, you and maybe Avery too have hit on a key component of most things in life, which is there are no shortcuts, right? So LinkedIn is a tool to help maximize efficiency. But at the end of the day, just like in the world of entrepreneurship and value creation, it boils down to hard work, right? So who is willing to put in the work to deliver the value? And in your case, Ricardo and Avery, who is willing to put in the hard work to participate in this high contact sport that is, job finding and career starting, and really it just requires a tremendous amount of effort, both online via LinkedIn and other places, and offline, as many of you know, via career fairs and other avenues that you have available to you. So yeah, I'm glad you said it, Ricardo, and John kind of solidified it. Those who are willing to work at it consistently and over time will ultimately win. So
I'd also like to add on to, I don't know if it was Maria or Eva mentioned this about volunteering. I did see I thought it was a pretty extraordinary case. There was a couple adult couple moved from Ireland. The husband had a job in Arizona. The wife was, worked in academia, had great skill set for the university, appropriate for ASU, but there was no positions available at the time. And she said, you know what, how about if I just work the front desk as a volunteer? And we of course said yes. And then, she hit it off with people very well. Months went by, things changed. She ended up getting hired and had a very good career thereafter.
Cool. Great example. And Jennifer, thanks for your comments there on chat as well. Good tips. All right. Thanks again, Jesus. And Ricardo's asking about GPA. You want to chime back in, Ricardo?
Yes, real quick. So one of the things I've heard, I don't know if it's true, is that sometimes when employers see a GPA that's too high, that they assume that you're like like not social or something like that. How much truth is it to that?
You know what, maybe I'll let others answer this, but I've never seen that.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I tell students that, you know, unless you're going to medical school or some other kind of professional pathway that really takes a hard look at academics, I mean, it's really more about what you're able to deliver. I love John's example earlier about the headline being, I always make my deadlines. If that's your headline, I can almost guarantee a employer could care less what your GPA is, you know, because in the real world, it's about can you actually deliver? And there's so much more to delivering value than being able to, you know, pass tests throughout your engineering or business curricula. So engineering, I'm sure there's certain, you know, credentials you might need in various areas of engineering, and in some cases business, of accountancy or other places, but go ahead, John.
So Ricardo, I would, you know, thinking about that, you may want to make sure that it's clear in your profile, in your resume, in your interviewing, you know, demonstrate how you're a team player, right? You don't talk about what I did, it's what we did as a collective team. That's the only thing I could think of as why someone would object to a high GPA if you think you're a lone wolf and not a team player.
I'm just going to try and chime in here, Brent. Although we've kind of strayed a little bit from LinkedIn, as somebody who's hired probably literally thousands of people in my career, I look for three things, right? One of them is a positive learning curve, which to me means, do you believe you know everything, or do you believe that your job is really about learning stuff, right? And your skill set is about learning stuff. The second one is that you're not a jerk, right? How do you work in teams? How effective are you in working and helping solving problems? Because that's really what your job is going to be, particularly in engineering. It's hard problems. So a positive learning curve, not being a jerk. And the third one that I look for is somebody who gives a shit, right? Who cares, who has passion about the work that they do. The fact that you are at ASU and the fact that you are working through an engineering or a business degree means that there's a certain competence level that you have in your chosen field, right? And so by the time a resume makes it to my desk, that's all been kind of screened. So the real question is, can you work in a team? Can you learn? Because I'll be able to teach you everything that you need to know, right? I can see Maria nodding her head, right? But if you walk in and you don't believe that you have anything to learn, breaking that down is a really, really hard task, right? So positive learning curve, not being a jerk, and caring, right? Passionate about what you do, because those three things will take you as far as you want to go.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, Bev, would be your ability to communicate. You know, I mean, when people don't look me in the eye when they're talking to me, then that, you know, it's difficult for me to get a sense of them. So really being good at communicating with another individual and working in a team is really important.
Yeah, I would agree.
Great tip, Bev, and thanks for chiming in, Maria. Yeah, I love Bev's cavalier language here because, you know, she represents the real world, something that is fast approaching for many of you. And she is not lying when she says how many people she's hired as a tech executive. So take heed in those guiding principles. They're good ones. So thanks, Bev. All right, well, I don't want to keep, normally we keep people past class time. So I was hoping to continue to celebrate our National Labor Day holiday here on a Wednesday by giving you back some time in your Wednesday afternoon schedule to work on class things or just be a fun-loving college student like I know you all are during this pandemic. So again, thanks to all of you for giving up some of your time to learn from John. We've all learned a lot here, I think, today. So John, as an action item for you and I, we definitely need to set up that alumni group for this class. And maybe we can talk offline about how to get that started, and then we can import all of these students from this class into that LinkedIn group and give everybody a place to claim, more real estate to claim on the professional network that is LinkedIn.
Be happy to do that.
Cool. All right, everyone, look for that invitation to come to join our Entrepreneurship and Value Creation Alumni Association on LinkedIn. It's a great tip for John. And if all of you want to bolster your profiles or create your own subgroups to lead and moderate, probably wouldn't be a bad idea. So kudos. Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Appreciate it.